Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Love That Loves You Back, a podcast between myself, Valerie Kabov, and my dear friend Jonathan Fremantle. Uh, I'm an artistic miscreant, otherwise known as a self-described third-generation art professional, who's currently raising a fourth-generation art professional, uh, born in the depths of the Pale of Settlement in the former Soviet Union and partly raised in Australia, lived and worked in London and Paris, and 15 years ago, by a quirk of fate, relocated to Zimbabwe, where I'm the co-founder of First Floor Gallery Harare, trying to figure out life, education, art, and predominantly love of art as life goes on. And without further ado, over to Jonathan.
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, Jonathan Fremantle. I grew up in Cape Town and studied in London. I did a long apprenticeship in fine art in the old sense, and have been more making art in one way or another ever since then. I live in Edinburgh now, but I also lived for a while in Johannesburg, where I had Hazard Gallery, and that was the context that I met Valerie about 10, 12 years ago, and just loved the conversation we had immediately about painting and how painting is everything. And that conversation's been a constant source of joy and sustenance over the years. So it does make sense that we share the conversation and look forward to where this goes.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it usually goes anywhere and everywhere, but somehow we always come back to art, and
Yeah,
because it is the love that loves us back. Thank you very
right.
much for joining us, and we look forward to sharing the journey. Hi, everybody, and hello, Jonathan.
Hi.
Yeah, and for once, this is what is it, an early evening? Well, it's, late afternoon for you, whatever. Well, even middle of the
I
afternoon. I
mean,
hate the time
it's
difference.
3
I
p.m., but
guess
the sun's going down in 45 minutes.
oh, same. It's the big, it's definitely going to go down in 45 minutes in Harare. So the sunset is the same. So today, we are reprising a discussion that we started like earlier this week, about about Peter Doig's recent or current foray into curatorial activity, I would say, but in a slightly seditious way, because it's his first project upon joining Gagosian, and he decides to do it by curating a show of mainly dead artists. And it's actually quite an interesting, and I feel that it's a slightly seditious selection because it includes Balthus, who's always a little on the controversial side, like nothing if not controversial. And then also, interestingly, an early Rothko,
Yeah.
um, uh, which I have a feeling is a conversation that got picked up when Doig was doing his show at Musée Orsay, which was concurrent with the major Rothko retrospective at Fondation Louis Vuitton last year. And so my feeling about the current Peter Doig show is that it is a is a retrospective in the true sense of the word, of like looking backwards, an exhibition, but also one that probably, there's an expression that always stuck with me, is that if you are facing a corner, if you're stuck looking into a corner, that the only way forward is to turn around and go back,
Yes,
right?
sure.
And it feels sort of in a melancholy way that Doig is trying to retrace some steps and trying to even see how he can rediscover himself, especially because he alludes two of his works in the show. A work I think from called The Night Playground, which I think is from the first decade of the 21st century, like something like 2009. And then a more recent work, and the A Night Playground is an extraordinarily powerful sort of muscular and extreme, like it's basically an extreme masterpiece on so many levels. And then his most recent work is almost melancholy and not being that, and it's kind of him trying to grasp at elements of art history. And of course, he's a master of, as far as painters go, he is extraordinary in his grasp and engagement with art history. And so this exhibition seems to be kind of an artist reassessing himself in
Yeah.
the context of history.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that for sure, and I reacted in the same way or similar way. Um, I think disappointment is the wrong word because, but there was a feeling of like, that the show didn't have the meat that you're looking for, and I guess the meat you're looking for is what he does next. So
Mm.
it's a pause, it's a kind of liminal in between moment. And for an artist, for most artists, and um, you have less kind of concern about that. But he's such a shining light. He's such a the sort of beacon in some ways as a painter. I'm speaking one of the greatest, if not the greatest, living painter. And you want to know what that painter does next with his own brush. And it's fascinating to see the artists he chooses to present alongside his own work, of course. But there's also a feeling of like a great musician who's had a couple of albums which were sort of cover tracks. When's
Yeah.
the next album coming out? And this is a really weird parallel, but I happened upon Van Morrison's recent album on Spotify, which is they're instrumental versions of all of his greatest hits, where he does
But,
he's not
but
even
he's so good. But Van
brilliant.
Morrison is a great musician.
He's not even singing. He's humming to the tune. So I mean, it was very strange to see that what is this about? Is it just trying to fill a space, or are you trying to trace in the same way maybe as Doig is trying to trace his way like Ariadne, out of the labyrinth, and where is the source of who I am? Um, you know, all of this might be completely null and void in like 3 months when he comes out with this banging show, and we hope that that's what's going to happen. Um,
But
yeah,
but what I was thinking is that I was quite curious about the choice of the Rothko in the exhibition. That uh, it is uh, it is an earlier Rothko. It's not quite so early. And if you have seen the Rothko, show at Louis Vuitton, what was extraordinary about that exhibition is that it presented all the stages of Rothko's career almost as complete lifespans. It's like, and at every stage you could say if he had only done that, that would have been enough for him to be a great master. And this was just kind of a slice, and maybe, and again, we're totally speculating here that Doig is taking a slice that is not the final outcome, and maybe seeing himself as like not being in the final stage. And I think this kind of gives us an opening into thinking about an artist who doesn't want to be reduced to his brand, as it were, or a stylistic formula that is so often seen as the be all and end all for
yeah,
contemporary artists, especially young artists. And given the fact that we've killed off art criticism, in a neat way, and I think you would have faced similar pressures, right, as a young artist.
yeah, for sure. I think that that's a whole beautiful big area. The one is what Doig is doing is referring to himself in the vast expanse of art history. And he may even be saying, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And with this show, he's placing himself in it. Even with the recent work, which is, I think we can say it's weak. It doesn't feel
Mm.
complete. Um,
Yeah.
Even that work in the show feels amplified in its incompleteness by the works that he surrounded it with. And being someone who so resolutely refers to himself as an artist in this gallery of previous men and women who've chipped away at the coalface, then it's the real deal. He's trying to go for the real thing. And I think when you get stuck in style or you get forced into an idiom or whatever it is, I mean, when I was younger, my late godfather, who meant well, and he was in advertising, and he meant well, and he was very connected, and he wanted to kind of make my career at one point. And in many ways, he helped me by just introducing me to rich people. But he also got involved in the kind of sculpting of my identity as an artist. And at one point said to me, you just need a hook. You need a thing that you repeat and repeat and repeat, and then people get to know you eventually. And I felt as if the sentence was like poison, to certainly to someone who I also refer to myself as a very small pebble in the vast mountain of art, and reviled. My body kind of curled up into this idea that you have to stop on one little pebble and polish that for the rest of your life. Obviously you want to grow and break the language that you've created and create a new language constantly. And the only place to really refer to is the highest, which is the masters that have gone before us. And your own small hope that you're offering will progress this vast journey a little bit further. And at the same time, be relevant to the time that it's in. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think in when I was growing up, I mean, I had my father being an art critic always used to say, I mean, in a similar fashion, that you need to have handwriting, a very distinctive, clear handwriting. And I think, I mean, it's obviously translation from Russian, but a lot of European languages adopt that's kind of idiom for, style, a signature style, right? So it's your handwriting but even someone's handwriting changes. God knows I don't write the same way as I did as a teenager. But I also felt that was really very much a trap, like to pursue a distinctiveness when you don't, at an age when you don't know who you are as well. It's like the journey, and the journey is the discovery. And I think that is really interesting because right now there's so much pressure on everyone, or young people in particular, to define who they are, even though they're at a time in their life when they're least positioned to. And so of course they grasp outside parameters that are actually, which resolve in, making work that is more around navel gazing rather than genuine insight, where you go from the inside to give something. You take what was given to you on the outside as something that actually and project it onto yourself so it actually usurps the position of genuine of genuine expression, in a sense that actually connects you with the world. Rather, it separates you from the world
For
because
sure.
it limits you.
There's definitely a trend for I guess because we are so pummeled by a constant kind of refreshing screen obsessed culture, which is providing us with new things all the time and live updates on whatever the thing that we think we're interested in. And so really, that old idiom of today's news is yesterday's fish and chips paper it's like 5 minutes ago is already irrelevant, apparently, which it isn't, but there's this illusion um, that identity exists on the surface, and it's about style and not substance. which is a classic older person thing to say, but I
Yeah,
do,
no.
and I think also when you remove the critic, the true critic, as in that person who's deeply educated and in love with the this pantheon of greatness that have gone before, and is able to draw from that well. And it's not saying that's good or bad. It's just saying there's more to do, or this in relation to that isn't quite hitting it. Um, and it reminds me of a thing my mentor here, Richard DeMarco, said to me once. He's an amazing old dude. He's changed my life and many other artists' lives. He gave Marina Abramovic her first show. He was brave enough to bring Joseph Beuys out from Germany for the first time, and Gerhard Richter. And anyway, I asked him about the role of the critic, and he said that unless you love the artwork, you have no right to speak about it. Because if you don't love it, you don't know it, you don't understand it. And it really hit me, that because the love he's talking about is the love we're talking about in our podcast, and what the true critic is doing, which is, I've gone deep into this well of connection, and this is what I can see and what I can't see. Um, so yeah, we're in a strange space, and I think that's why we hungry for it even more. Perhaps that's what we're looking at with this Doig show.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting about loving and relationship being a very important feature of criticism, because I remember one of our artists in the gallery asked me to give a crit to a young artist that she was mentoring, and I just gave fairly superficial comments, and she said, and after she said, "Why didn't you go hard?" It's like, give her like tough love, and I said, but I don't know her like that. I don't have a connection of care and a relationship of that she trusts me and I trust her in a way that would enable me to give her some, tough suggestions. Yeah. And so I think you're right. But also, I think, what does that love actually mean? I think it also means, again, like if you're conditioned that the world was created 5 minutes ago, then you're not even in a position to love, because love means it has to emerge from that depth of knowledge, and it is part of a shared conversation with art history. And I don't think this is a conditionality that emerges purely in Eurocentric context, which everyone would be rushing to accuse us of. But in the same way as, when you look at somebody like Pierre Bourdieu talking about cultural capital, every society is replete with cultural capital. Just because a certain position has gained dominance doesn't mean that other positions can't be asserted. And in fact, responsibility of an art historian is to be able to look at the field, and because you love the field, you love the field with an open heart, and you engage with it in a genuine sense, with a sense of curiosity, right? But also obviously conditioned by training, and how do you and I think it's that conversation with art history that that is also an important signifier for artists thinking about their careers and their practices, that it's not just about them. It's also about them in context with all of them, their peers, their ancestors, whoever their ancestors are, as being able to give something to the world. So it's the great sharing, right? As opposed to the selfish, or the world has told me I am XYZ, and therefore this is what I am. The world told me that I have rabbit ears, and a freckle,
Yeah.
and I will be painting rabbit ears and freckles to represent
It,
people with
it,
rabbit ears and freckles, as opposed to, and I think in a way there is a measure of, like, I guess, Jejun immaturity about that, because it sort of suggests that it's trying to force everyone to relate to a very discrete point of view. And I'm like, I don't feel, well, if I don't share your identity, what you're saying is that I can't connect with it, which is perfectly fine, because then I don't have to look at it. But then if you, well, no, but it's true. It's true. If you're saying I can't understand, then give me something to help me understand, or engage with me in a way that connects us. Otherwise, if you don't want me, if you're saying I have no capacity to understand, that's also okay. Then don't expect me to buy it either. It's actually a bit like that. It's those are the things, but because we come from a shared tradition, and the history, and also you're missing out on the possibility to connect in a way, even when there is that possibility exists, because you haven't considered the field, right? Or considered it as something that can nourish you as
yeah.
well. And that happens.
It's somehow, yeah, I'm with you for 100%. And yet the sadness that the viewer feels when they look at a work which doesn't sustain them, feels superficial, is also, it's two ways, because you also look at that work and you think that person hasn't been nourished themselves by making it, so there's a kind of flatness that comes both ways. The viewer and the maker experience this kind of flatness that ends the moment you look at it. And it's wonderful that a thing which is flat, like a painting, um, can have so much nuance and depth, and be so like a portal through to eternity. And it's also, we're not saying that the artist, back to the navel gazing realm, the difference between navel gazing, as in just stroking the kind of surface of your ego, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, these kind of binary surface level decisions, and going through the portal of your own body, your own experience, into something bigger and wider, which connects you to this vast canon of humankind and beyond. that your own portal is designed for you, which is your place and time and body and mind and so on. And you miss this huge fraternity, this, which doesn't just stop with Michelangelo or a Khoisan painting on a cave in a. It goes through to the reflection of. I saw Jupiter reflected on a lake the other day, in the middle of the mountains. It was so dark, and Jupiter was so bright, and it was reflecting on the lake, the surface of the lake. And I just blew my
That's
mind that light from a planet, light years away, was, and it was slightly yellow, like a citron yellow, was reflecting on this body of water in the middle of a mountain. And, all of that is there, this vast depth. And we need it, as that's what art should do and can do. Um,
Yeah, I mean, wow, Jupiter. And but no, I mean only you, Jonathan. It's like we'll be looking out for Jupiter. I will tell you, I've got a really funny story. Speaking of kind of, I call it ancient awe, when you experience something like a natural phenomenon and it overwhelms you. So I was on a plane one time, and I think it was nighttime, and I think I was sleeping, and then I looked out the window, and I think either something, the sun was coming out, or was it the moon? I couldn't tell, but I felt like I was seeing the sun rising, and it was super close. And I just, like, because I was half asleep, I felt that I was experiencing the sun,
Mm.
like in a really direct contact, and it just was blowing my mind. Like I'm in space, I'm next, and I had ancient dread, like of seeing like what an because remember that in ancient times they didn't have we have all this super all of this reflective light. Our skies are not so as dark as they used to be, so the clarity with which they saw things is much greater. The sun, the skies were darker, the stars were brighter, so their capacity to be awed by nature is was
Great.
amplified. And so I thought, and then I very quickly realized that I'm seeing the moon, which was super large in the window nonetheless. But at the same time, I said, I'm going to remember that feeling, even though it was a mistaken feeling, it still blew my mind just for
Yeah.
those moments that I thought I was engaging with something enormous,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, this is amazing, amazing stuff. But
Yeah.
but um, but to get back to discussing style, right, and stylistic consistency, I think you raised the point like recently that this is also this kind of singularity of stylistic singularity is actually possibly a recent phenomenon. I mean, some people were like historically, some people are only capable of one thing, and that's okay,
Right.
right? But historically, artists were not limited in
No.
their capacities, and that choice to be a monomaniac, as it were, is a choice.
Yeah.
And if it is a marketing choice, then it's not a valid choice. I mean, in my view, it's not a valid choice because it's an externally mandated choice. Although, I mean, I have to say that it occurred to me that while Picasso made a bunch of pottery, he was like pottering away, pottering, and maybe he was playing, but maybe he was making accessibly priced Picassos, we don't know.
I think he definitely was doing a bit of that for sure. I think he was also um, trying to not be serious. I think that was one of I think he was at it was such a serious time, and the world was ripping itself apart, and he was capable of doing that. Look at Guernica. But I think on the large part, he was trying in a quite magnificent way to be not serious. But I mean, artists like Michelangelo certainly he wasn't a one-track pony. He was designing staircases and painting ceilings and he did the outfits for the Vatican Guard.
But I have to tell you, and this is of Michelangelo, that Michelangelo's big beef with Leonardo was precisely that Michelangelo felt that Leonardo wasn't dedicated enough to the practice of art. Hilariously, having been an architect,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Leonardo did more stuff because he was scientific, he did more engineering, and so Leonardo felt that no, yeah, no, Michelangelo felt that Leonardo was just
yeah.
too much of a playboy, not focused, so
I reckon Michelangelo was also um, knew that this guy was a genius painter and just wanted him to do more painting, because
yeah,
and finish a
yeah.
few.
And
I
he
think
was
there's a
right.
in
He
that.
was
He
right.
was right. Yeah. I mean, imagine we had twice as many Leonardo paintings. I mean,
Imagine we wouldn't have had the travesty of Salvatore
oh,
Mundi.
yeah.
We wouldn't
That would
have
have
had to
that would have
deal
only
with that.
arrived in 200 years' time down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.